Hello everybody, this is GeneralJannis, and today in Chaos Tactics I'm looking at the Thousand Suns faction focus and where is the disc for Ahriman. So with no further ado, let's take a look. So today, the 25th of May, we are moving close by to June, and today we had the last of the Chaos faction focus. We have the Thousand Suns, and soon we'll be in June territory where we'll expect all rules to be revealed. But in this video, looking at the Thousand Suns faction focus, looking at the army rules, then the Ahrimans and Rubrics datasheet, looking also at the Vortex Beast weapons and the Strat that was revealed, and then weapon damage output and the best Cult of Magic selections, and then looking at what Rubric Marines could do versus some Space Marine Terminators for some analysis. So starting off with the army rules, I was not very optimistic before the faction focus. I was a bit worried about with all this new psychic just becoming weapons and things like that. But I think all in all, I think there was some decent faction focus here. And the army rule is the Thousand Suns are keeping the Cabal Rituals in some form. So I think it's quite nice that they kept the Cabal points. In the example, as today, Psychers generate Cabal points to be used in the command phase, and you gather them in the command phase, and then you can use them in different phases. So Ahriman is giving 3 Cabal points, a Rubric Aspiring Sorcerer is giving 1. We don't know what all the rest are giving, but quite similar build up for this. And then they have showed 5 rituals to choose from. They are a bit expensive, but it's quite well, because now these are like psychic abilities and they are undeniable and you cannot fail or get denied, but they are doing something similar as some of the choices of spells was doing previously. There is no like +1 to cast any psychic spells anymore, because there is basically no psychic spells to cast, but these rituals are kind of like spells. So we have for two Cabal points, we have the Weaver of Fates. This allows only one reroll to reroll one saving throw. So okay, if you only have 2 left, you can use this at the start of any phase. For 5 Cabal points, there is the Temporal Surge. This is one unit is selected within 18 inch of the Psyker to do an extra normal move, but then a bit nerfing here. This unit that double moved cannot charge this turn. And then we have Echoes from the Warp for 6 Cabal points. You can use the Psyker's unit can be a target of a stratagem for 0 command points. We don't know, of course, yet all the command points, so it could be in handy. But again, 6 Cabal points it's quite a bit. And then we are moving to maybe the strongest, at least damage-wise, the Doombolt. Now this is 7 Cabal points, so you can target a visible enemy within 18 inches. It doesn't have to be the closest enemy. And then you roll 1 dice. On a 1, you deal D3 mortal wounds. On 2 to 5, you deal D3 plus 3 mortal wounds. So on average, that would be 5 here. And if you are lucky to roll a 6, you deal D3 plus 6 mortal wounds. That would be a maximum of 9 mortal wounds. And you could be, so that's very nice, especially as it doesn't only target the closest visible enemy. And then for 9 Cabal points, the Twist of Fate. When I first read it, I thought it was saying invul saves, but it says basically armor saving throws. So with 9 Cabal points, the most expensive one, an enemy unit within 18 inches and visible to the Psyker, this enemy cannot, in this phase, cannot use any armor saves. So if they mean also invul and all this is bypassed, this can be really strong, a very strong combo using a lot of shooting attacks, and then maybe with no saves, then yeah, the enemy would suffer terrible losses, I think, here. So not so many rituals to choose from, not so many spells to choose from, but some of these are still can be still very helpful. And then for the detachment rule, this is a Cult of Magic. You can select in your command phase. You can select for the psychic weapons that exist in the army. This is both let's say the smite type of shooting psychic powers, and then in close combat the staffs and things like that that the sorcerers have. Those are also psychic. You can select for those weapons to either have lethal hits, which is basically sixes to hit auto wound. So this is quite good against the vehicles and high toughness enemies. And then you can select the sustained hits, which gives you exploding sixes to hit more hits. This is quite good overall, let's say, versus most units. Or you can give the weapons devastating wounds, sixes to wound, give mortal wounds instead. And this is quite nice, as you will see, for the melee weapons of the sorcerers. But a lot of people maybe think that this is for all the weapons, but this is only for the psychic weapons, not the normal bolt guns. Unfortunately, you can't select just for all the normal weapons to get these abilities. So then, taking a look at Ahriman's datasheet, we know that he's a Cabal sorcerer. He generates three Cabal points. We see that in his basic stat he has a 3+ save, and he has he's keeping his 4+ invulnerable save. He only has 5 wounds now instead of 6. He lost 1 wound for some reason, but now he's a leader and can be attached to I'm assuming Rubrics or Scarab Terminators. Probably he will be able to join both. And the attached unit gets a quite nice buff from having Ahriman on board, because when Ahriman is leading a unit, each time a model in that unit makes an attack, you add 1 to the wound roll. This would also apply to Ahriman himself. If he is alone without the unit, he doesn't get this buff, as I understand it. And his arch sorcerer ability is that once per battle you can use a ritual for free. So you can use this maybe 9 Cabal point, no armor saves, or the Doombolt that I will show you also is quite good versus all targets, let's say. He has in his shooting weapon, he has a pistol, he has a psychic stock, psychic weapon, 1 attack, but it's a precision weapon, so he could be sniping some target attached leaders, and combined with a twist of fate with a lucky d6, maybe you could be taking out some attached leaders to enemy units within 18 inches. And then the black staff is a damage 3 staff with a strength 7, AP -1. Again, AP is only -1, so AP a bit degrading, as we have seen for many data sheets. There is none of the psychic attacks here has the hazardous keyword, so there is no risk that it will fail and deal mortal wounds to Ahriman. But only 6-inch move, and there is no mention of a disc as a war gear. So will they remove this ability? We don't know yet, but there is no mentioning here to give him a disc so he can move further. And maybe it will be strange also if he had a disc walking with Rubrics or Scarab Terminators. And then looking at the Rubrics datasheets, surprise, there is a movement nerf for the Rubric Marines. So they are down now to movement 5-inch. So this is a big question mark. Why? They still have the 5+ invul. The rest of the stats are as expected. Objective control 2 wounds, 3+ save. There is no mention for all his tasks to get better saves versus damage 1 weapon. This seems to have been lost, let's say. They are generating 1 Cabal point, the Aspiring Sorcerer, and the Icon of Flame can improve on critical wounds APs of attacks by 1, but it doesn't generate more Cabal points, which would be quite handy to get 2 Cabal points from a small unit of Rubric Marines. And then their shooting ability, let's say they have the ability Bringers of Change, and this is basically like the Death Card's Plague Weapon rule previously. So you basically reroll once to wound from ranged attacks. If the enemy that you're shooting at is within range of an objective marker, you can reroll all to wound. So this is basically like the Arch Contaminator rule. So with quite low strength weapons and then some rerolls to wound would come in handy for range, and they get it automatically. Most weapons, as we have seen, the the bolt gun and the warp flamers and also the solar reaper cannon, they lose AP. Basically, most of the weapons are now AP -1. The Infernal Bolt Gun is no longer a rapid fire weapon. It has a flat 2 shots from the whole range of 24 inches. And then Warpsmite, the psychic attack from the Aspiring Sorcerer. This is two shots, anti-infantry 4+. This is a pistol with devastating wounds. And if you are shooting infantry, you would be wounding those on a 4+. That would be a critical, at least on a 4+. The 4+ would be then considered a critical wound that would generate a mortal wound instead of a normal wound. And with especially if you're shooting the Warpsmite against an enemy infantry in objective, you would be able to reroll all the wound rolls, and you will get a high probability to get, let's say, the 4+ to give some mortal wounds. It's not huge because it's only damage 1 weapon with 2 shots, so you could give it select the sustained hits, and you get exploding 6s to hit as well. And then we saw some abilities and weapons for the Mutalith Vortex Beast. So we have the Warp Vortex now. It's a shooting attack, no longer these strange abilities that you could select. So this is basically a weapon with three profiles. The blast that is strength 9, damage 2, and then the beam that also has devastating wounds. 24-inch range with strength 18, AP -4, and D6 +6. So this is basically, it's only one shot, probably worth some reroll if you can give it, so you don't miss this high value shot. This is good against enemy vehicles, and so far from the other profiles, Ahriman and Rubrics, they don't have very high strength weapons. The Mutalith Vortex Beast will also give an aura to Thousand Sons Psychers. They can increase the ritual's range, double them, basically. So this means that from 36 inches across the board, you could be, let's say, firing the Doombolt to an enemy you could see. So that maybe will put the Mutalith Vortex Beast in more Thousand Sons lists. And then they showed us one stratagem, the Psychic Dominion. For one command point, this is a bit situational. You can protect one unit, 1000 Suns unit. It will gain 4+ feel no pain versus psychic attacks from an enemy. This could be done in either, for example, shooting or melee phase. And then the enemies that are attacking with psychic weapons, then they get the hazardous. So the attacker would risk getting his model slain or dealt mortal wounds. But the question is then, how often will that happen? For maybe situational if you're facing another Psyker army. So in this table, I'm looking at the weapons damage output that we have seen from Ahriman, from the Rubrics, and then the Mutalith Vortex Beast. So if we start by Ahriman, of course, the Infernal Bolt Pistol is not doing a very high wounds on average. You can see in the table the expected average number of wounds dealt to different enemies we have seen from 10th edition. The comma is a decimal point. Please don't get confused by this. The Psychic Stalk, with only one attack, it can do, let's say, half a wound on some models, so not super strong on average if you don't combine it with and give it devastating wounds or something else, but it can target leaders. And then in melee, he's quite strong with a black staff. He can do 2-3 wounds against infantry, 2 wounds versus some of the not so tough vehicles here. But if you and then you see, I calculated also for the black staff, if you are selecting the command in the command phase to give all the psychic weapons lethal hits, then you can improve a bit the damage output versus the vehicles with auto wounding. Sustained hits better gives you some improvement versus all of the targets, but devastating wounds is the strongest one. So getting instead this 3 damage to become let's say 3 mortal wounds, this can be really strong, as you can see. So if you select with the aim in melee, devastating wounds for these staffs seems like the best selection. And then I calculated the average damage output for the Doombolt ritual. This would give 5 mortal wounds on average across any target here. And then yeah, that's also quite strong. But you can do multiple smites and all this, as we know today from Thousand Suns. Moving on to the Rubric Marines, the Soul Reaper cannon with it already has devastating wounds, and this is quite good, and it's the best shooting weapon they have. We don't know the points yet, of course. And then we have the Warp Flamer. If you are in range, this does more damage than the Inferno Bolt Gun. And then the Warpsmite, it can do, let's say, 1 wound versus infantry, not super strong. If you also give it lethal hits, you can do a little bit more. Sustained hits is overall better for the Warpsmite, as you can see on the table, but again, maybe 1 wound on average here. And then in close combat, the Rubrics basically don't have a melee weapon, but the force weapon from the Aspiring Sorcerer can do a little bit of wounds. And then finally the Warp Vortex from the Mutalith Vortex Beast. You can see the different profiles. The Blast profile is good versus Intercessors, as expected, with damage 2 weapons. The Beam can do 5-6 wounds on Space Marine vehicles, so providing a little bit of answer against vehicles. And the Torrent is a bit, it's more against chaff, not let's say the best selection here. And then here I'm calculating for several scenarios here. Rubric squads attacking Space Marine Terminators as a, let's say, sort of benchmark. So if you have a 5-man Rubric squad that has bolt guns, the Aspiring Sorcerer has a bolt pistol, and there is 1 Soul Reaper cannon. Or in the other squad, we substitute the bolt guns and the bolt pistol with Warp Flamers and the Flamer pistol. And then shooting, we can have the Space Marine Terminators off the objective or on the objective. If we are off the objective, the Rubrics are rerolling once to wound or rerolling all to wounds if the Space Marines are trying to take an objective. And you can see on the table shooting versus Space Marine Terminators here, the damage output. If you are within range for the Warp Flamers do more damage. So it's within the objective, you can increase the damage output. And if you add Ahriman in the mix, and here I didn't include Ahriman shooting, but just he gives the bonus of +1 to wound, we could kill almost 2 Terminators within objective with the Warp Flamers, especially boosted by Ahriman, so they can still do something. If you have a 10-man Warp Flamer squad, you would be dealing more than 10 wounds if the enemy is within an objective, so that would be 3 killed Space Marine Terminators. And then in melee, basically we have the 5 Rubric Marines and in the base scenario, and then we have with Ahriman's buff +1 to wound, and then you can see which benefits the most: the lethal hits, the sustained hits, or devastating wounds for the force weapon of the Aspiring Sorcerer. And here we see the devastating wounds is the best option for melee for this force weapon. But as we can see, Rubric Marines are not super strong in the in close combat as expected. So, summary and final thoughts time. I think this faction focus was quite decent. I think the flavor somehow with the Cabal Rituals is kept in the army. These rituals are becoming sort of the selectable spells, and they are undeniable. You can't fail them, and you can't, let's say, you cannot get perils, and you cannot fail this. So it's basically point at something and give it a Doombolt if you have the Cabal points. Would be nice to build an army to always have at least 16 Cabal points, or even 21. It would be nice to be able to do a Doombolt and a Twist of Fate per turn, taking away the armor save, dealing a lot of mortal wounds with a Doombolt. That could be quite nice. Temporal Surge can be good in the beginning of the game to give double moves to go to places. As we have seen for many other factions, a loss of AP for most weapons the rubrics, the Thousand Suns had quite nice AP -2 on most of their shooting weapons. Now it's AP -1. I don't understand the point of the rubrics getting death guarded in this respect, that they get a 5-inch move and then they reroll once to wound with their shooting weapons. Basically, it's getting like previous death guard movement and reroll plague weapons, and then you can select to upgrade your psychic weapons. The devastating wound, so far from the analysis, is the best selection for the melee weapons because they don't typically have the devastating wounds. Lethal hits if you are fighting against knights or something with a lot of vehicles. Sustained hits, and in the shooting department, this is best for the Warpsmites and things like that already have devastating wounds. Then you add sustained hits to get a bit more damage. The big question mark about the disc for Ahriman, and in the final focus of the faction focus here, they mentioned that Magnus the Red would become very strong, but of course we don't know what Games Workshop's means by that, but they meant that he will get some very nice profile and some good aura abilities. So this concludes the video. Let me know what you think about the Thousand Suns, and what you expect to see more, and what you liked and what you didn't like. If you want to discuss further, please visit the Discord channel. You can become a patron to support my efforts to try to bring you this math hammer and analysis of the rules, or you can also become a YouTube member, and then you get the small GeneralJannis icon for your commentary. With these words, GeneralJannis signing out. Stay safe out there, and bye-bye.